There was a time in my life when I believed that helping others, comforting people, and being there for them was a basic human trait, which is absolutely true, but taking care of others while disregarding oneself is wrong. I felt everything deeply. I couldn't see people lonely or getting hurt. I would do whatever I could to make them feel better, even if it's for a little while. I thought feeling deeply was the same as loving wisely. I thought that because I could sense the emotions of others, understand their pain, and instinctively offer comfort, I had discovered one of life's greatest gifts. Again, it's true, but I never thought that this very thing could lead me to a life of misery. Now, don't get discouraged by hearing this, because after pain comes empowerment. I now understand that at that time, what I was experiencing was the first stage of the empath journey, the naive empath. The naive empath is the person who feels everything but understands very little about how those feelings affect them. They absorb the moods of a room without realizing it. They carry burdens that do not belong to them. They mistake emotional intensity for connection, sacrifice for loyalty, and rescuing others for purpose. Their heart is open but unguarded. Their compassion is genuine but untrained. I know this stage well because I lived in it for years. I used to walk in a room and immediately sense tension before anyone spoke. If someone was upset, I felt restless. If someone was grieving, I carried heaviness in my chest. If someone was joyful, I felt lifted. At first, I thought this meant I was simply caring and attentive. I did not realize I was taking in emotional energy without boundaries. The naive empath often becomes the listener, the helper, the peacemaker, the dependable one. People are drawn to them because they feel seen and understood. Friends unload their struggles, partners lean on them heavily, family members expect them to smooth conflicts and hold everyone together. And because the naive empath values harmony, they often say yes when they need to say no. I remember times when I answered calls late at night because someone needed comfort, even when I was emotionally exhausted. I remember giving advice to people who never intended to change. I remember staying in relationships where I was appreciated for what I gave but not cherished for who I was. I confused being needed with being loved. That is one of the painful lessons of the naive empath. They often attract people who are wounded, chaotic, manipulative, or emotionally unavailable. It is said that empaths and narcissists are a match made in hell, not because they deserve mistreatment, but because their compassion is visible. Their willingness to understand can become an invitation for others to overtake their emotional space. Without boundaries, empathy can be exploited. Yet I do not speak of the naive empath with shame. This stage deserves compassion. There is beauty in innocence. There is something noble about the person who has not yet become cynical, who still believes kindness can heal everything, who still reaches toward pain instead of turning away from it. The naive empath carries a rare sincerity. They remind us that tenderness still exists in a hardened world. Their strengths are real. They are often deeply intuitive. They notice what others miss. They sense loneliness behind laughter, fear behind anger, sadness behind silence. They offer comfort naturally. They make people feel safe. They can create warmth in cold places. They are often generous, creative, spiritually curious, and emotionally intelligent in ways that cannot be taught from books. Many naive empaths become the friend everyone trusts, the child who matures early, the partner who gives endlessly, or the colleague who keeps morale alive. They are often the unseen emotional anchors in families and communities. But the same gift that allows them to heal can also harm them when left unmanaged. Because they feel others so strongly, they may lose touch with themselves. They know what everyone else needs, but not what they need. They can identify other person's sadness in seconds, yet struggle to name their own resentment after years of overgiving. The naive empath is vulnerable to burnout. They may feel tired for no clear reason. They may need isolation but feel guilty taking it. They may struggle with anxiety because they constantly monitor emotional environments. They may overthink conversations fearing they hurt someone. They may internalize blame just to restore peace. I wrote in a journal once, "Why do I feel responsible for everyone? Why does someone else's disappointment feel like my failure?" At the time, I did not know the answer. The answer was simple, yet difficult. I had compassion but no boundaries. I had sensitivity but not discernment. I had love but not self-respect in equal measure. That is the central challenge of the naive empath. They believe love means absorbing pain. They believe kindness means endless availability. They believe being a good person requires self-erasure. But empathy without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. Many naive empaths fear boundaries because they associate them with rejection, selfishness, or conflict. They worry that saying no will hurt others. They worry that stepping back means they are cold-hearted, so they continue to overextend, overhelp for years and years until life finally forces a lesson through exhaustion, betrayal, heartbreak, or collapse. This stage is often painful because awakening begins with disappointment. The empath starts to see patterns. They notice who calls only when they need something. They notice who dismisses their feelings and opinions while expecting endless support. They notice how drained they feel after certain interactions. They notice that intuition was whispering truths they ignored. The naive empath must eventually learn that understanding someone's pain does not require tolerating their behavior. Feeling compassion for someone does not obligate endless sacrifice. Loving others does not mean leaving yourself behind. And with that awareness comes grief. Grief for the time lost, grief for overgiving, grief for the version of self that thought love had to be earned through giving and helping and sacrificing. But there is also power in this stage because awareness is the doorway to transformation. The naive empath is not weak. They're a gem which just needs some refining. They are learning that sensitivity is not a curse. It is a tool that requires skill. They are learning that emotional depth becomes wisdom only when paired with boundaries. They are learning that discernment is compassion's protector. If I could speak to my younger self in that stage, I would write this in my journal. You do not need to prove your goodness by carrying everyone. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to disappoint people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. You are allowed to choose relationships where care flows both ways. You are allowed to protect your peace. The growth of an empath often happens in stages. First comes innocence, then pain, then awareness, then mastery. The naive empath is the first chapter, not the whole story. So if you recognize yourself here, the one who feels too much, who gives too much, who forgives too quickly, and who wonders why you are exhausted, know that this is not failure. It is the beginning of consciousness. Every boundary you learn becomes strength. Every pattern you recognize becomes wisdom. And every time you choose yourself without cruelty, you evolve. The empath journey does not end in burnout, bitterness, or withdrawal. It leads somewhere greater to being an empowered empath. The empowered empath still feels deeply but no longer drowns in what they feel. They can love without losing themselves. They can help without rescuing. They can listen without absorbing. They can walk away without guilt. They trust intuition, honor limits, and offer compassion from a place of fullness rather than depletion. They are soft without being fragile, strong without being hard, open without being unguarded. That future is possible. but do not be hard on yourself for being naive. Honor where you are now. If you are still learning boundaries, still healing from overgiving, still untangling your identity from everyone else's needs, you are on the right path. The tenderness that once made you vulnerable can become the wisdom that makes you powerful. One day you will look back and thank the naive empath within you. Not for every pain endured, but for keeping your heart open long enough to grow into someone wiser. And when you arrive as the empowered empath, you will discover that the goal was never to feel less. It was to feel deeply, love wisely, and stand fully in your own light.